What is the name of the white stone that covered the outer walls of the Egyptian pyramids? White limestone. Which animals did the Mesopotamians raise to obtain meat and wool? Sheep, goats. What is the famous epic that describes human life and death created by the Mesopotamians? Epic of Gilgamesh. What is the name of the script used by ancient Egyptians and considered a form of hieroglyphics? Hieroglyphics. What was the main purpose of making mummies? For the rest of the soul. What is the famous female statue found at the Mohenjo-Daro site? Dancing Girl. Who is the notable figure from the various schools of thought during the Warring States period that synthesized legalist theory? Han Fizi. What were the typical patterns on bronze mirrors made during the spring and autumn period in China? Cloud and lightning designs. What is the world's first codified legal document from Babylonia? Hammurabi Code. Which gate of Babylon is known for its blue bricks and decorations? Ishtar Gate. Which kingdom destroyed Babylonia? Achaemenid Empire, Persia. How did Assyrian kings commemorate their victories in battle? Erecting steles and creating reliefs. What method did the Assyrian army use to stabilize conquered territories? Policy of forced relocation and cultural assimilation. What is the tomb type used to bury royalty in the Mycenaean civilization that differed from later Greek cemeteries? Tholos tomb. What era emerged in the Greek region after the collapse of the Minoan and Mycenaean civilizations? Dark Ages. What was the most noticeable difference in the social systems between Minoan and Mycenaean civilizations? Focus on maritime trade versus military conquest. What is the term referring to an independent city-state in ancient Greece? Polis. What was the battle formation used by hoplites in ancient Greece? Phalanx. What is the current name of the island known as Thera, where traces of Minoan civilization were found? Santorini. Who is the hero who defeated the Minotaur and returned to Athens? Theseus. Who is the hero known for beheading Medusa? Perseus. Who is the tragic figure destined to kill his father and marry his mother? Oedipus. Who is the hero with an immortal body but a notable vulnerability in the Trojan War? Achilles. What is the work by Plato that includes the concept of philosopher kings and the theory of forms? The Republic. What is the concept that describes each being as having a purpose? Teleology, telos. What is the ultimate happiness and purpose of life humans should pursue? Eudaimonia. What is the concept in Epicureanism that signifies mental peace and tranquility? Ataraxia. Who were the bureaucrats responsible for state administration in ancient Athens? Administrative officials. What was the naval battle where the Spartan navy destroyed the Athenian fleet? Battle of Aegospotami. What was the naval battle where the Greek navy defeated the last Persian navy? Battle of Mycale. Why did the 300 Spartan warriors keep fighting to the end at the Battle of Thermopylae? Defense of the Greek mainland. Which country supported Sparta in the Peloponnesian War? Persia. What strategy did the Greek coalition use at the Battle of Plataea? Defensive use of terrain. What were the primary weapons of the Spartan army at the Battle of Plataea? Long spears and shields. How long did Sparta dominate Greece after the Peloponnesian War? About 30 years. What major reasons led Xerxes I to abandon the Greek campaign? Supply issues and rebellion. What battle completely repelled the Persian army after the Battle of Salamis? Battle of Plataea. What was the prominent colony city established by the Phoenicians along the Mediterranean coast? Carthage. Which modern country was Carthage located in? Tunisia. What were the symbolic fortifications of Carthage? Double walls. What type of treaty did Carthage sign with Rome after Hannibal's defeat? Harsh peace treaty. What were the primary forces of Hannibal's Carthaginian army? Mercenaries and cavalry. What oath did Hannibal take as a child under his father's guidance? To seek lifelong revenge on Rome. What environmental feature primarily contributed to the growth of states in Oriental civilizations? Fertile lands along major river systems. Which nation was the first to establish an empire in the ancient Oriental civilizations? Akkadian Empire. Why was the pharaoh regarded as a divine being in ancient Egypt? Believed to be the incarnation of the sun god Ra. What were pharaohs buried with to continue ruling in the afterlife in ancient Egypt? Slaves and servants. Which empire was founded by Cyrus II? Achaemenid Persian Empire. In which year did Cyrus II conquer Babylon? Year 539 BC. What is the name of the famous clay cylinder that records the achievements of Cyrus II? Cyrus Cylinder. What battle did Alexander the Great fight to deliver the final blow to the Persian Empire? Battle of Gaugamela. When was the full-scale excavation of the ruins of Persepolis initiated? (1930s). What was the famous reply by King Porus to Alexander the Great? Treat me as a king. What did Diogenes carry during the day to mock human hypocrisy? Lantern. What was the main reason for the spread of Greek culture during the Hellenistic period? Alexander the Great's conquests and city building. Which city served as the center of learning and culture during the Hellenistic period? Alexandria in Egypt. What are the distinctive facial features of Buddha statues made in Gandhara art? Western features and realistic expression. Which philosophical school of Hellenism emphasized pleasure and tranquility? The Epicurean school. Which philosophical school of Hellenism emphasized asceticism and reason? The Stoic school. What is the biggest philosophical difference between Greece and Israel? Greece practiced polytheism, Israel practiced monotheism. What is the language based on the script of the Hebrews? Hebrew. What was the main commodity that the Phoenicians traded actively? Purple dye. What did Rome turn the region into after destroying Carthage? Roman province of Africa. What did ancient Persia construct to improve administrative efficiency and quickly relay royal commands? Royal Road. What poison did the philosopher Socrates drink at his execution in ancient Greece? Hemlock. What was the primary method Herodotus used for documenting history? Travel and oral inquiry. Which region's people were the Scythians described by Herodotus from? The northern Black Sea steppes. Which king strengthened the walls of Babylon to make them even more formidable? Nebuchadnezzar II. At what age did Spartan boys begin their training in the agoge? At age 7. At what age were Spartan youths recognized as official soldiers after undergoing the agoge? At age 20. Which ancient Greek city-states are known for using the phalanx formation? Sparta and Athens. Who is the most famous Macedonian king known for using the phalanx tactic? Alexander the Great. What field did Aristotle categorize while studying the natural world? Metaphysics. Did Socrates actually say that even unjust laws are binding? No. What life attitude did Socrates emphasize, comparing an unexamined life to a certain state? Not worth living. What was the primary reason Christians were persecuted in the Roman Empire? Because they refused to worship the emperor. What event prompted Emperor Nero to persecute Christians? The Great Fire of Rome. What traditional color was the dress worn by the bride at a Roman wedding? White. What was the giant projectile weapon used by the Roman army for long-range attacks? Ballista. What was the strategic method of retreat used by the Roman army? Orderly withdrawal. Where did Emperor Constantine move the capital from Rome? Constantinople. What were the main reasons for the decline of commerce and trade in the late Roman Empire? Barbarian invasions and civil wars. How long did the Roman kingdom last? About 243 years. Who was the fifth king of Rome who developed the city construction? Tarquinius Priscus. What played a crucial role in maintaining the early Roman Empire's economic system? Road networks and commercial activities. In which political institution was Julius Caesar assassinated? Senate. Which two primary factions clashed in the civil war for power in Rome after Caesar's assassination? Octavian and Antony. Who was the leader who conquered Gaul and held significant power in the Roman Republic? Julius Caesar. Which civilization's traditions did the Ptolemaic dynasty primarily follow in governance? A mix of Egyptian and Greek cultures. During the Ptolemaic dynasty, which institution was renowned for its advancements in scholarship and science? Library of Alexandria. With which two Roman leaders did Cleopatra VII forge an alliance and romantic relationship? Julius Caesar and Mark Antony. What unique method did Cleopatra use to meet Julius Caesar? Hid inside a rug and appeared. What is the significance of Leonardo da Vinci's Vitruvian Man? Exploration of human proportions. What is one of the representative inventions of the Renaissance? Printing press. How did the development of printing influence the Renaissance? Facilitated the spread of knowledge. What negative impact did the Industrial Revolution have on the environment? Increased pollution and waste. What was the direct cause of the outbreak of World War I? Assassination at Sarajevo. Which countries were part of the Central Powers during World War I? Germany, Austria, Ottoman Empire, etc. What did Darius I establish for the governance of his empire? Administrative divisions and roads. What rights did Pericles expand to the citizens? Suffrage. What did Babylonian king Hammurabi create to establish social order? Code of Hammurabi. Who was the king that made Buddhism the state religion and unified India? King Ashoka. What did ancient empire kings do to establish centralization? Introduced a bureaucratic system. Who primarily handled education in feudal society? Clergy. Why was Leonardo da Vinci exceptional in both art and science? Because of curiosity and observational skills. Why did Renaissance painters use perspective? To express three-dimensionality. What impact did the Industrial Revolution have on education? Expansion of basic education. Why is Confucius's philosophy of Ren still applicable today? Emphasis on harmony in human relationships. One of the world's oldest capitals, now called Istanbul. What was this city during the Byzantine Empire era? Constantinople. Which emperor led the Byzantine Empire to its peak, leaving a legacy in law and architecture? Justinian. Which religion did the Byzantine Empire adopt and develop as its state religion? Eastern Orthodoxy. What were Germany, Italy, and Japan, the Allies during World War II, collectively known as? Axis powers. What was the coalition of the United States, United Kingdom, and Soviet Union during World War II called? Allied powers. What was the major epidemic that weakened the feudal system in medieval Europe? Black Death. What system strengthened the power of the king again in medieval Europe? Absolute monarchy. Who was the first explorer to successfully circumnavigate the globe? Magellan. Where did Columbus actually land, thinking he had reached India? American continent. Why were mathematics and geometry linked to art during the Renaissance? For composition and proportional calculations. Why did humanists consider classical works important? Viewed as keys to understanding humanity. What prompted women to enter the workforce after the Industrial Revolution? Involvement in factory labor. What is the name of the approximately 2,500 kilometers long road constructed by King Darius of Persia to improve administrative efficiency? Royal Road. Which empire eventually led to the fall of the Byzantine Empire despite its long history? Ottoman Empire. Where did Siddhartha Gautama meditate to achieve enlightenment? Under the Bodhi tree. During which dynasty was the mayor of the palace more powerful than the king? Merovingian dynasty. What is the independent territory of the Church that began when Pepin III gifted land in Italy to the Pope? Papal States. What event was the decisive factor in the fall of the Byzantine Empire? Fall of Constantinople. Who were the people forcibly brought from Africa to the Americas during the Age of Discovery? Black slaves. Who was the emperor that founded the Sui dynasty? Yang Jian. Which Chinese dynasty was established by Kublai Khan of the Mongol Empire? Yuan. What was the conflict called, which occurred during the Cold War as a proxy war between the United States and the Soviet Union? Korean War. Who was the philosopher during China's spring and autumn period that emphasized benevolence, righteousness, propriety, and wisdom? Confucius. What was the representative battle method used on the Western Front during World War I, characterized by prolonged standoffs and trenches? Trench warfare. What was the name of the decree issued by Emperor Constantine that legalized Christianity in the Roman Empire? Edict of Milan. Who became the first emperor of the Holy Roman Empire after the division of the Frankish Empire? Otto I. What Arabian science was spread to Europe through the Crusades? Algebra. What is the historical record that documents the achievements of the various Khans of the Mongol Empire? Yuan Shi. Who was the king that returned to the throne of France after Napoleon's fall and the restoration of the monarchy? Louis XVIII. In Napoleon's conquests of Europe, which country did he appoint his brother as king? Spain. What is the economic system advocated by Adam Smith during the British Industrial Revolution called? Laissez-faire. Which city is one of the holy sites in Christianity where Jesus spent his childhood? Nazareth. Who was the explorer that, sponsored by Portugal, discovered a sea route to India by sailing around the southern tip of Africa during the Age of Exploration? Vasco da Gama. What was the decree that granted citizenship to all free men during the Roman Empire? Constitutio Antoniniana. Who was the prominent writer of the Renaissance known for the Divine Comedy? Dante Alighieri. What was the last major battle of the American Revolutionary War, where British forces surrendered? Battle of Yorktown. Where was the church door located, on which Luther's 95 Theses were posted during the Reformation? Castle Church in Wittenberg. What is the name of the oldest codified law established in Mesopotamia? Code of Hammurabi. Who is the person that started the Reformation by criticizing the sale of indulgences and writing the 95 Theses? Martin Luther. Who was the eunuch that led a massive fleet under the order of Ming Dynasty's Emperor Yongle to Africa? Zheng He. Who was the Polish astronomer that proposed the heliocentric theory stating the Earth orbits the Sun? Nicolaus Copernicus. What is the major religion that originated in India in the 6th century BC and spread across Asia? Buddhism. Who was the person that crossed the Rubicon, saying, "The die is cast," and won the Roman Civil War? Julius Caesar. Who was the Tsar that westernized Russia and made it a great power in the 17th to 18th centuries? Peter the Great. Who was the fifth Khagan of the Mongol Empire who conquered China and established the Yuan dynasty? Kublai Khan. Who was the Portuguese prince that promoted exploration of the west coast of Africa? Prince Henry the Navigator. Who was the first navigator to complete a circumnavigation of the world? Magellan. Which two countries supported Communist North Vietnam during the Vietnam War? Soviet Union, China. Which of the Baltic states became independent after the collapse of the Soviet Union? Estonia. What is the document that limited the power of King John of England and laid the foundation for parliamentary politics? Magna Carta. Who is the founder of the Mongol Empire, which established a vast empire across the Eurasian continent? Genghis Khan. What is the title of the highest samurai ruler who held military power during Japan's feudal era? Shogun. What was the characteristic combat method on the Western Front during World War I? Trench warfare. What is the ideology from the Zhou dynasty in ancient China that justified the legitimacy of the royal rule? Mandate of Heaven. Who was the sultan that became a hero for the Islamic side by recapturing Jerusalem during the Crusades? Saladin. What is the document that proclaimed human freedom and equality during the French Revolution? Declaration of the Rights of Man and of the Citizen. What is the name of the highest decision-making body of the Roman Republic? Senate. What is the name of the occupational association formed by merchants and craftsmen in medieval European cities? Guild. Which English king established the Church of England, Anglican Church? Henry VIII. Who was the Emperor of Russia that promoted Westernization and founded St. Petersburg? Peter the Great. What is the name of the Congress held to reorganize European order after the fall of Napoleon? Congress of Vienna. What is the term for the workers who engaged in a movement to destroy machinery in the early Industrial Revolution? Luddites. What is the name of the movement where British workers demanded the expansion of suffrage? Chartist movement. What was the original name of Genghis Khan, the founder of the Mongol Empire? Temujin. What is the world's first writing system used in Mesopotamia? Cuneiform. Who discovered the law of universal gravitation that facilitated the scientific revolution? Isaac Newton. What is the name of the printed book from the Goryeo dynasty, the world's first metal movable type printing? Jitchi. What is the term for the annexation of Austria by Nazi Germany before World War II? Anschluss. What is the intellectual movement that started in 18th century France called? Enlightenment. What was the 1993 agreement for the peace process between Israel and Palestine? Oslo Accords. In what year did Russia sell Alaska to the United States? Year 1867. What was the name of the prominent submarines used by Germany in World War I? U-boat. What was the war called when Egypt and Syria attacked Israel in 1973? Yom Kippur War. Who was the Dutch humanist that authored In Praise of Folly during the Renaissance? Erasmus. What is the name of the ancient trade route that connected China with the West? Silk Road. What was Napoleon's policy to economically isolate Britain called? Continental Blockade. What was the name of the international conference held in 1884–85 to discuss the partition of Africa? Berlin Conference. Who was the German that invented the printing press, leading to the spread of knowledge? Gutenberg. What term describes the easing of tensions between the USA and the USSR in the 1970s? Détente. Which ancient kingdom in Asia Minor was the first to use metallic currency? Lydia. Who was the king that founded the Tudor dynasty in England after the Wars of the Roses? Henry VII. What was the new unit adopted as the world standard length during the French Revolution? Meter. Who was the first emperor of Shu Han during the Three Kingdoms period in China? Liu Bei. What was the last name of Juan Sebastián, the captain who completed the first circumnavigation and returned to Spain? Elcano. What is the name of the western region that rose in rebellion during the French Revolution? Vendée. What was the name of the U.S. foreign policy announced in 1947 to counter the spread of communism? Truman Doctrine. Who was the Viking explorer who named Greenland? Eric the Red. Which country sponsored Columbus when he arrived in the Americas during the Age of Discovery? Spain. Who led the Reign of Terror during the French Revolution? Maximilien Robespierre. Who was the leader of India's nonviolent independence movement? Mahatma Gandhi. What was the event where a pro-democracy demonstration was forcibly suppressed in Beijing, China? Tiananmen Square Massacre, 1989. What are the 4 inventions from China that had a significant impact on world history? Paper, printing, gunpowder, compass. Thank you for watching until the end. We'd love to hear your feedback and historical insights in the comments. Your support helps us create even more history quizzes. Let's keep exploring together.